All right, we are getting started here. If you are watching a recording, fast forward 2 minutes. I'm gonna see if I can actually get Twitter up and running today. I think I can. I tested it a little bit earlier. It seems to be working. Ooh, yay. Looks like Twitter is actually working. So if you're following me on Twitter, you can now watch on Twitter. And that is just QFomGray at Twitter. Okay, so that's up and running. Let's see if the chat's working today. So there's one component. Still trying to figure this out. They upgrade it. Every time these systems upgrade, you never know what you're going to get. It's just sort of killing me. So let's see. My chat seems to be up there. Okay, so according to Andy, Facebook is up and running. Hi, everyone on Facebook. Don't know which Facebook is up and running, but we're assuming. Everything shows connected on this side, honey. So we're going to start here in just one more minute. Twitch is struggling a little bit at a time. Slowly but surely, it is getting there. So, all right, it's the new year. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you guys all had a great new year. I don't know about you, but I thought they were all crazy being out there in New York watching the ball drop with those hundreds of thousands of people. What were they thinking? And a lot of them. Oh my goodness, I'm not even going to talk about it. Anyway, but yeah, bunch of nuts out there. But we spent, of course, as always, a quiet evening at home. Didn't make pork and sauerkraut until yesterday, but figured I was making pork and sauerkraut before I leave on the trip this week. So excited to go back to Tuscarora Lapidary Society in Brookhaven, Pennsylvania. If you've not visited them or don't know anything about them, it's one of the strongest lapidary societies in the country, so you should look it up at lapidary.org. Doing classes this coming week on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it is also being offered hybrid. So it's an opportunity if you haven't taken a class in a while or want to jump in on a class that you haven't taken, you can do that remotely. So the hybrid is still available. You won't be able to get your kit, but they are making the video available for an entire month. So you can review it at your leisure, and we will get you, now I think about it, we'll get kits out to you when I get back, which is not going to be for another 2 weeks. So the schedule for the live is a little bit spotty because I'll be traveling on Wednesday, but I will be there for Wine on Wednesday. I'll post the Zoom link here probably tonight, and I will be coming to you from Pennsylvania and bringing in the new year. So join me for Wine on Wednesday, and we'll celebrate the new year and talk about what we can all look forward to this year. Considering it's been like 20 months, right? 19 months since COVID started, and we are still chugging along. Don't know what's happening this year, except that I do have a full schedule. Fingers crossed, everything will be will work out and there won't be any cancellations. But you can go to the qfomgray.com site and look at upcoming events to see everything that's happening that might be in your area. I'm going to be out the West Coast again, going to do Las Vegas and Salt Lake, and we have not one but 2 trips scheduled for metal immersion excursions to Vienna, Austria. I have not posted a link, but I will. It's there if you go looking for it at theurbanbeater.com or qfomgray.com. You'll find the link if you're interested in going to Austria. All the details are there, and we are looking. There's a few more spaces left, so if you want to join us, you still can for this spring. So we're going to be going to Vienna in May, end of May into June, and then December. Now, December has not been formally announced, but just sort of mark your calendar. It's going to be the first week of December if you are interested at all, or reach out to me directly and I will get you some information. But the information for the May event is up and running, and the one exciting thing about that excursion is that we will actually get to see our friend Sully Girardi perform. It's going to be one of her last performances in her career, so it'll be exciting to see that and to celebrate a long career with her, at the end of a long career. anyway, so that is what is happening coming up. Okay, and of course, metal immersion is next week, or not next week. Where are we? Yeah, next week, because TLS is this week. So that's happening in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. Classes are at metalimmersion.com if you're looking to still join us. Classes are going to be small. We're sort of keeping it that way, but there's still a few seats left if you want to join us. So looking forward to that. What are we doing? So we're starting a new series of enamel. So on Mondays, we'll be doing enamel projects when I'm home, that is, and we're starting with initially enamel. So this project, you know, it looks really straightforward and it looks really easy, but and it is actually, but there's always a little trick to everything that I do. So what I did here was very simple. I am enameling. These are transparent enamels. I have stamped my metal and enameled over it, and because of how glass works, you know, the reflective value and whatnot, the more layers of glass that you have, the darker it becomes. So here you can see that the enamel has gone into the recesses, and that's why you get to see these initials so prominently. There was no extra coloring or anything like that, and I'm going to show you how to do all that as we go here. But I wanted to point out what makes it sort of interesting. So that's what makes it interesting. The other thing too is you can sort of, well, let me see this one. I like this one. You can see how this has a really nice it's a heavy piece of metal, and it's a substantial piece, and I did this on purpose because I wanted to give this piece a little extra something. Usually when you're torch firing enamel, not many people pay attention to the edges. So on this one in particular, I wanted to have this little bit of definition so that it just looked like, shall we say, a medallion, I guess. And so what I did was I used 18 gauge copper instead of your standard 26 or 24 gauge where you would have to enamel both sides. So by using the 18 gauge, it made this piece a little bit heavier, and you know, it just looks like something. It doesn't look flimsy, and it's just really nice. Additionally, what's really nice about using 18 gauge is that I did not enamel the backside. I didn't clean it up either, but we're just going to pretend like I did. Okay, so anyway, I did not enamel the backside. You can see that here too. Because the metal is so heavy that I can get away without counter enameling. It's absolutely legit. So remember, the rule to this is you cannot have more enamel than metal. When you have more enamel than metal, then what's going to happen is it will just start cracking off. If you have more enamel than metal, then you absolutely have to counter enamel. Now, because more than likely you will not see how thick that is compared to the enamel. You can barely even see the layer of enamel on top. But if you actually had enamel that thick, let me just say, step away from the enamel. I mean, obviously you're sifting way, way, way too much. You do want to sift a fair amount on this piece just to make sure that we get that darkness into the recesses. But again, you're not going to go as heavy as the metal. So that way, again, we don't have to counter enamel. What you see here, I'll show you my goofs too. Because these are samples, I really don't care. But what you see here is I actually enameled on this side and decided it was so awful because it was too dark and I couldn't see my stamping. I decided, oh, why not? It's just a sample. Let's use the back side instead of going through and cutting another piece. And what I did, where the screw up was, I totally forgot. Duh, I didn't put it on a trivet. Instead, I put it directly on my mesh. Yeah, well, it sort of got stuck, and that's why you see the grate on there. So don't do that. Just remember to always use your trivet, okay? So that is the project today, and so let's just jump in and get started. So first things first, what I did was I have my 18 gauge. Gee, it doesn't look square, does it? Hold on. Huh. I thought it was square when I cut it, but it doesn't look square anymore. Okay, so let's see if we can fix that. Oh, the things we do. Let's see. I'm going to remeasure it right there. Yeah, I'm off by 1 millimeter. So I'm actually just going to eyeball this and trim it by hand. I realize it is 18 gauge metal and it's a little bit harder to cut, but it's doable. You know, everybody always asks me what gauge can you cut to on the shears that we sell? And the answer is really, how strong are you? Because clearly I can cut 18 gauge metal with our German shears. It's the only shears that we carry. They're German, and you get what you pay for. And anyway, so, but most people really, honestly, they really can't cut much past 20. There's only a few people I've met who have been able to easily cut 18 gauge. So just remember that, it has more to do with hand strength. So don't even think you're going to cut 16. So here I'm just nipping off the corners just to create a radius before I take a file to it. So I want to make sure that I do all these little finishing touches before I start enameling. And I also want to make sure that I get this piece clean so I don't get my hands all over it first before I start cleaning, working with it. So we're going to do all these little things first, and then we'll clean it, and then we'll enamel it. So again, I like to lop off my corners when I'm doing a square and then put the radius in. It's a little bit faster, as you can see I'm already done, than to sit here and file a radius into a corner. Okay, so that's first. Let me see. My edges are a little bit rough. So as always, I put a little tiny bit of a bevel into it and make sure it is nice. I'll also hit it with a little bit of sandpaper. Just to make it soft. Okay. So next up, to get these letters, I'm just using a metal stamp. And by the way, if you're not familiar with theurbanbeater.com, that's our business. And by the way, Andy's with me as always in my ear telling me your comments. So if you have any comments or questions, do post it and Andy will relay it to me. I haven't been able to get my chat system up, so I cannot read any of the chats. Sorry. Anyway, so you take out your metal stamp. On a bench block, we're going to go ahead and just give it a really, really good stamping. Okay, so the question is, would 20 gauge work without counter enamel? I'm going to say no. Unless you put like the absolute thinnest layer on there. But I'm going to say no. I have worked with 20 gauge, but it just feels a little bit too thin for that. Okay, so now I'm debating, how do I want to do this? Okay, I'm going to do it like this instead of this way like I did before. I'm going to turn this on the diagonal, and I'm going to use a stamping hammer. I don't know if you've ever seen the stamping hammer that I designed and is being produced by Frets. We have it on our website. It makes stamping a lot easier. Now I'm going to have to hit this several times because this is a big stamp. Okay, I wanted it to be a really good impression, and that was another reason why I was using 18 gauge, because I wanted to have a really, really nice recess to get all the enamel inside. So you can see it here. So I just stamped a J. It's not the cleanest piece of copper. That's okay. We're going to clean it later. And then I'm going to take out my disc cutter. And there we go. And you can also do this with design stamps. And we have a whole bunch of design stamps out there too. So, oops, what am I doing? Okay, I'm gonna eyeball this. Like so. Sorry about my head there. I think you see my head. But hold on. Because I wanna look over that. Okay. Put it in the wrong hole. Okay, so if you want to use design stamps, you can also use design stamps. See, I'm going to show you that here in a minute. I have another piece what we're going to do. If you don't have a disc cutter, we also have these Eco Hay disc cutters, which are on sale at $155 instead of $210. They're really great. It cuts, like you saw how I just cut 18 gauge and it just went right through. It was fabulous. Okay, so there it is. There's my piece. And we're going to go ahead and clean it. So you can clean this with Penny Bright, or you can clean this with torch firing. So I'm going to go, what am I going to go with? Actually, I'm going to go with Penny Bright. By the way, there's a story to tell here. Okay, I'm using the last of what I have in the Penny Bright paste. You cannot buy Penny Bright paste anymore currently because of a shortage. Apparently there's a shortage, as well, we know that there's a supply chain shortage. Okay, that's for sure. But apparently with the supply chain shortage, there's also been a shortage in citric acid. You know, I like the Penny Bright product because it's natural and it's non-toxic. So it is mostly composed of citric acid. And apparently, I spoke to the owner, apparently there has been a run on citric acid, and all the big guys, the big manufacturers, bought up all the citric acid, and he got left out there without any supply. So we had to change what we were doing, and now if you look on our website, we now sell the Penny Bright gel, which works just the same. It's just a little bit of a different product, but again, what we're looking for is for it to be non-toxic. All right, so I'm going to move this out. So you can see the difference in my metal. So all I did was I just rubbed the Penny Bright on there, and I had have a bowl of clean water on the side that I just rinsed off. But I'm going to go right in here with my little brush, and I'm going to brush this up a little bit more and make sure that my letter is really, really nice and clean, just like so. When you're working with enamels, make sure that your hands are clean, and you know what I just discovered? My hands apparently aren't clean because I just left a fingerprint. So I'm going to clean this off one more time. Yes, the fingerprint matters because that means that it's oily, right? And you can't have any oil on your surface, on your metal surface, or else the enamel will not adhere properly. Or not fuse, okay? Because what happens is the oil presents as a barrier. Okay, so I feel much better about that. Let's clean that up. There we are. And find something that you can lift this up on. A penny works. I'm going to use a ring, apparently. And then you'll need a little bit of either clear fire or holding agent. Some people like to use hairspray. I don't like to use hairspray. Just, you know, because it's in your studio, and I don't want to get that stuff all over my studio. So I'd rather have it contained in a container like this, in a dish like this, and use a brush on it. So I'm just going to do a little bit of holding agent. Do you have to use holding agent or clear fire? The answer is no. We're on a flat surface, but it just helps everything stay where it needs to be. So the question is, how big are my squares? They're 3/4 of an inch. So 3/4 by 3/4. And so here, remember, we're going to use transparent enamels. Because if you use opaque, you're not going to see the letter. So you're going to need to do a little bit of experimenting. So this is where, again, you're going to take out your scrap and do a little bit of experimenting on your scrap and test out your colors before you go into your live piece. And that's where my mistake came in. I decided, like on this one, to use red raspberry. It was just transparent, but I thought it was a lot more transparent than it is. So the color got too dark and I couldn't see my lettering. But anyway, so here I'm going to use Nile. Let's see, something to tap with. And put it in your sifter. Remember not to fill your sifter up all the way, no more than half, or else the enamel won't move properly. We're going to sift starting from the outside, working our way in, working in a circle. Towards the middle. The reason why we do that is because enamel / glass pulls to the center. Okay, so we always want to start from the outside and work our way in. A lot of people, when I see them sifting, they're like all over the place, like this. Don't do that. Remember, work in a spiral, work towards the middle. Okay. So then we're going to move this very carefully. With my Pam tool. This is an old, I call it a Pam tool because Pam came up with this one. This is an old stainless steel fork that I took out of time. And these are great. And you'll see why here in a minute. Okay, we're going to move this to the side because we're going to use it again. Watch this. So notice I'm going to go right in there and set it down perfectly. You don't even need to buy this stuff. If you don't have a fork, you can go to the Salvation Army and get one for $1. But heck, you could probably get it for $1 at the dollar store. So it's just a stainless steel fork. All right, so you want to let the holding agent dry, and then we'll torch the whole thing. I'm not going to wait for it to dry. Hopefully it won't bubble up. So gently, notice how I'm not moving it around like this. It's okay, the piece is really small. If it was really big, then you need to keep it moving. But it's a really small, and I'm using a really large torch. I'm using my pistol torch. We have that on the website too. So I love using this torch for enameling because it's so much heat. So here it comes, here it comes. Keep heating, and can you see that? You can see the edges are getting nice and golden, and I'm going to overfire this a little bit to ensure that all of my copper oxides have disappeared. I think you did it. Don't know what happened here. It's a little bit of a divot, so you know what, I'm going to give a little bit more heat and see if it evens out a little bit. So here you want to make sure you heat it and enough so that the copper oxides have all absorbed and disappeared. Okay, if you're firing this and you see the pink or red from the copper, then you haven't fired enough. Just go ahead and refire, and you can see how it's gotten sort of golden on the edges, which is really nice actually. And well, obviously I didn't sift as evenly as I thought I did, but we'll just pick this up and set it aside. Let it cool. Oops, where's my bench block? Okay, so you see if it's stuck, oh, well, it unstuck. If it sticks onto your trivet, give it a second and it should release. If not, pick it up and tap it on something hard and it will release. But there we are. Okay. Again, don't know why I have a little pot mark there. But I'm going to let that cool, and let's go do another piece. So, what's funny is everything has its time, doesn't it? I had this disc sitting on my desk for Lord only knows how long. I don't even remember why I made this, okay, except it's a little G and it has a little crown, so it's sort of cute. And so I was thinking this morning, hey, why not do a piece of silver and finish this piece off once and for all, right? So here what I'm going to do is I want this a little cockeyed. So the question is, could the bubble have been caused by clear fire that wasn't dry? Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what happens when you don't let it dry long enough. Okay, so I'm just going to punch a hole with my hand punch. And this one, this was 22 gauge because when I do metal stamping, I really like to stamp on 22 gauge. So it is a little bit thinner. I'm going to go ahead and counter enamel the back side first, okay? So, here we go. Again, a little bit of clear fire or holding agent. How did I lose my brush? Oh, there it is. How about the brush is on top of the container of holding agent? I know. Convenient, huh? Okay, so we'll go like this. I already cleaned my silver from before. So just a thin layer. The thicker you go, the longer you have to wait for it to dry. So don't put too much on there. Unless you live in Arizona and everything dries so quickly out there. So there you go. But it is winter here in the Northeast, and it's humid relatively. It's freezing cold outside today. The ground is frozen. There's a smattering of snow on the ground. So we are staying inside and keeping warm. That's what we are doing. So this is counter enamel. Just leftover enamel, scraps, that kind of thing. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing. Make sure that your hole, you can see my hole, your hole is clear of any debris. And we'll just put it right on there. We'll fire this. When you're doing sterling silver, you've got to be a little bit careful that you don't melt it, okay? So don't get too aggressive with your heat, although you need to get it obviously hot enough for it to fuse. They say that you can only enamel on fine silver. I'm not clear why they say that, because I've been doing it on sterling for at least 10 years, and it works just fine. So here what we're going to do is we're going to fire this and just take it to the orange peel stage, right? So orange peel meaning until the surface looks like an orange peel. It doesn't need to go to the gloss stage because we're going to be flipping it over and firing it again anyway. Really hard to see on camera, I know. Put it there. So now my question is, since I was actually planning on giving this to someone, is if I want to see if I can correct that little bit of a bubble. I'm going to go ahead and try, because you know what? It's copper, and it's not the worst thing if it didn't work, right? She doesn't know. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to apply a little bit of enamel with my brush right there. My brush has a little holding agent on it, so picking up the enamel was a lot easier. So I'm just going to put a little bit of enamel right there. I'm going to set this one aside because, oops, it's cool already. Look at that. And I'm going to stick it in the pickle. Usually you don't pickle enamel, but since we're going to be firing again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put it right here. The trivet's warm, and actually you can already see it's starting to dry up already. My enamel was a little wet, but okay. I'm going to give a little bit of heat over the top just to dry it up so you can see that before I go under, because I don't want it to bubble. And let's see if we can get this to fuse again and get that little bubble to go away. But it's perfectly legit, because the thing is you're refusing and getting all of that enamel, which is glass, soft again, and so it should all fuse together. Now it looks black because of the holding agent, right? But it should all disappear here in a second. So I'm just going to heat up, mostly in that area, until it looks like it's fused. ask a... Andy has a question, but I didn't understand it. Can you ask that one more time, please? So the question is, could the not enameling on sterling silver be because of fire scale under the enamel, and that you can't pickle after you enamel? The answer is no, because if you think about it, when you're firing copper, if you've ever done copper at all, I mean like copper soldering, you know how dirty that is? Do you know how much fire scale is under there? A lot more than silver, right? So not completely clear what that's about. So there we go. There's my piece. It's clean. My hole is free of any debris. So let's take a look here. So this is better. So you can still see the indentation, but I think it looks better. So I'm going to call that a win. We'll set that aside. We'll clean that after. Okay, so this one I want to clean up a little bit more because I want to make sure that the lettering's really nice and clean. This is our brass scratch brush that we have on the website. Some people like to use fiberglass scratch brushes for enamel. Let me just say, what a pain, because that fiberglass gets everywhere, and the next thing you know, by the end of the day, I have it in my skin too. So be careful if you're using fiberglass. You should really be using it under some water. Obviously I wasn't. So, but anyway, so back to the question regarding the silver. You know what? They say that you should even do depletion, right? Is that what they call it? When you do silver, and I've never done it. I've never bothered, and it still works. And you know, if I hadn't lost the piece that I did 10 years ago, I would have shown you that it's still viable and it's still good, and the enamel hasn't cracked off. So there is my silver, and we'll do this again. But I feel like, honestly, with that whole theory, sometimes, honestly, people just make up things just to sound knowledgeable. And this is simply science. There is nothing to argue. It's just science. It's just chemistry, really. When we're working with enamels, be careful, okay? You're really doing a lot of chemistry. And that said, you know, people come up with these theories and they say this and they say that, but if it breaks the laws of physics, think about it for a second. How does that work? You know, it doesn't. So you still have to maintain the rules of physics, right? Okay, hopefully it's more even than the last one. Ugh. Okay. Let's move it aside. Move that into place so you can see what's going on. Duh. The fear of reticulation or melting. Well, frankly, okay, so the comment, another comment is maybe it's just a fear of reticulation or melting. Sure, but again, they say that you can fire, you can enamel fine silver, but not sterling silver. Yes, sterling silver has a lower melting point, but it will reticulate and melt fine silver just the same, right? I know. I give. I'm just going to go with this. So here, we're doing the sterling. We have already done the counter enamel because it's a thinner piece than what I was doing on the copper. And we'll do the front side here. And I'm using Nile green today. And what will be interesting is you'll see the difference in color between the copper and the silver. You know, I love enameling on silver because it gives such a nice color, because you don't have the paint from the copper obscuring your enamel colors. And for those of you who have deep pockets and are adventurous, do it on gold. Gold is absolutely amazing. Okay, so you can see there on the edges it's starting to go. And there it is. I'm going to back off and not give it too much heat. I'm just giving it a little bit extra time, because if you are up there right up to the comb, you will melt your silver. It's just a matter of time, right? So by backing it off, the heat is not as hot, and I would expect and assume that you would not melt your silver. I'm going to put another layer on. You definitely cannot see it on the screen, but I can see it here. It's not as even as I'd like it to be, and by putting on another layer, it will help even everything out. Now, if you were watching closely when I went to pick it up, I sort of had a goober right here I missed, right? So we're just gonna pull this off. Where's my bench block? Put it on my bench block, and we're gonna re-sift this here in just a moment. It's still hot, so I'm being careful not to touch it. I'm not even going to put holding agent on here because it's flat. I am just going to go ahead and I love this color right now. I am just going to go ahead and sift. Sorry about my head, as always. And I'm going to sift again from the outside, working in a spiral, skipping over that one high spot. How much enamel are you supposed to put on here? 3 grains thick. Oh yeah, because we can tell, right? I know, I love saying that. It amuses me that somebody actually wrote that. It's like, yes, the official answer is 3 grains thick. Like anybody knows. Go Gadget Eyes? I don't know. How do you know it's 3 grains thick? That's just crazy talk. Okay. Grab my fork again. This is a 3/4 inch disc, again on 22 gauge sterling silver. You know, I would probably, when I do sterling silver, I don't have a tendency to do 24 gauge, but you probably save yourself a little grief by going to 22, perhaps. It might not melt so easily. So we're going to go right back in here. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit so you can see what's going on. Gently just heat the whole thing. Take your time. Typically when enamel doesn't stick, it's because it didn't fuse properly. Just remember that. You see the little black dot that came up just a second ago right there, and there was one right here. Burned right off. No stress there. Look, magic is coming in. I'm turning it down just a little bit. Dig it. Pretty happy. And there we are. Okay. Again, if it's stuck on your trivet, give it a tap, and it'll come right off. And yes, I grabbed my piece directly on the enamel. It was just long enough for it to set, and I don't have to worry about it being too soft and making an indentation on it. So I'm going to set that aside. I'll show you the back side of that when that's cool. So here we have the first piece, and I'm just going to clean it off with some Penny Bright because I've already done a final final enamel. I don't want to put it into the pickle because it'll etch the surface of the enamel, of most enamels. Not all of them, but most of them. But if you're not in a final firing, you can definitely pickle. But one of the other things too, one of the other precautions is you don't really want to pickle in warm pickle. You want to put it in cold pickle. Okay, so here I'm going to go ahead and clean these edges also because I want a nice, bright, defined edge. Okay. Just like so. You see it's starting to come up. It's not as dark anymore. But I'm going to show you another trick in a second here. So I'm putting it in clean water on the side. The question is, does Penny Bright affect the enamel? The answer is no. It does not affect the enamel. So again, you're working with citric acid. It's a pretty mild acid. You know, this Penny Bright is so benign that I always play this game in classes, in in-person classes, and show people that it's so safe that I can lick it. And yes, I've done it, especially when I have a fresh jar of enamel. Okay, so you can see I have a nice surface, but I want that to be a little bit nicer. So what you can do is you can take out your aluminum stone, make sure it's wet. I always say work under dripping water, not running water, because you want to waste the water, right? But notice how I am cleaning that. I'm not scrubbing it this way. I'm scrubbing it up and down. And I'm doing it with water because we are working with glass. So you can get this really nice surface. Because we are working with glass, you do want to make sure that it is wet. But this is how you use an aluminum stone to clean all your edges. So I knew somebody was going to ask what the hole punch size was that I used on the squares. I believe it's a 3/16, but let me think about it for a second. Because 4/16 makes a quarter, is 3/16. It wasn't the quarter, it was one up from there. So 3/16 is what I used. You see how nice and clean that is? See, there's my final, not my final, my third edge. Again, you don't want to scrub your edge into, you know, everybody wants to do that, into your aluminum stone, because you'll make gouges in there, right? So you'll scrub up and down like so. No matter what shape you have, this is how you want to work it. Okay. And as if the aluminum stone doesn't last like forever as it is, but it'll last even longer if you do it this way. But see, it's creating this really, really, really nice bright edge. Some people don't like the bright copper, so you can go ahead and patina this. This is also a way to remove any enamel, any transfer that had gotten onto the sides. And if you had some transfer that got onto the back because maybe your trivet was dirty, you can definitely take it off with an aluminum stone too. You would just come in here and scrub it off, right? Always work with water when you're working with enamel. and glass. Okay. I know. I just need a little bit more, right? There. There we go. Okay. Happy, happy. And there's my piece. Let's take a look at the silver. Hold on. Okay. So there's my silver. It is pretty even, and I'm really happy with that. It looks like the edges, and here's the back side. So that was my counter enamel. It looked really black, but it was actually mostly blue when I sifted it. And so here again, I have a little bit of transfer on the edges. We'll clean that off, and we'll make this, give it that just extra something something. So we use this instead of a file because we don't want to crack the enamel. Yeah. So again, I had just a little bit of enamel transfer on there. More than likely it came from the trivet. Okay. Oh, I'm so happy I'm finally putting this piece to use. Oh, yeah. Maybe I'll wear it this weekend at classes. There we go. Okay, that's it. That is initially enamel. You know, it's been a while since I've done a series like this. So I did not put together any instruction sheets for download, but I'll work on that and get it posted at some point. You know, packing to leave for Tuscarora and metal immersion this week has my head full, and putting together submissions from Virtually Overcrafting. So we are already gearing up for that, which is coming up at the end of March. So there's my story. If you have any other questions, do send me a personal message or send it on the Q Talk Facebook page, and I will get to it. Thank you. Anyway, so thank you everyone for hanging out. Happy New Year. You know, we're gonna start this year with a bang, and we are going to approach it with all of our gusto, right? Right? Come on, we're gonna have a great year. I'm really looking forward to it. There's so much going on and so many positive things that we can look forward to. I hope the same for everyone who is watching this. So thank you so much. Okay, one final question. So the question is, if you don't have an alundum stone, can you use an emery board? I suppose. I don't know. I never do. Let me see. I don't see why not. It's just not as effective. That's the key. Is it's not as effective if you're trying to get off any enamel. Yeah. If it's just raw silver, yeah, why not? So the question is, how do you alundum stone the inside of the hole? I guess the answer would be you wouldn't. Because unless you've got a piece that's small enough, I'm going to say no, you won't be able to. I would take out a brush and get in there with Penny Bright the best that I can. So that would be my answer. But you know, the other thing too is you do have grinding wheels. Let's see, I don't have my grinding wheel here, but you know, they do have grinding wheels like this that are in a cone shape. You can use that. You want to use a really, really, really fine one and just gently hit it, like gently with a lot of water. Okay. So great questions. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks for hanging out and supporting us, and you know, showing us all your love out there. Really appreciate it, and you know, all the shares that we get out there, and there it is. All right. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you on Wine on Wednesday, and I'll be back in a couple weeks, I think. That's where we are, or when I can. All right.